Today's show is brought to you by Audible, and right now you can get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/joined-up. There's over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle or MP3 player. Thanks for tuning in to the Joined Up Writing Podcast, a weekly show featuring interviews with fantastic authors sharing their personal stories on how and why they write. There's hints and tips for aspiring writers and great book reviews from top bloggers. Follow us on Twitter at JU Podcast. Right, cue the cheesy theme tune.
Put down your pen and stop your typing. Grab yourself a drink, 'cause it's Joined Up Writing.
Hello and welcome to the Joined Up Writing Podcast, where a little procrastination can go a long way. I'm Wayne Kelly and it's episode 73 with psychological thriller writer Sam Carrington. We've also got another review in Book Bloggers Corner from one of our regular reviewers, Bibliomaniac, aka Catherine Sunderland. Before we get to all of that, a quick check-in from me as editing and writing of my debut novel Safe Hands continues. I've been making loads of progress of late, starting with a very productive Saturday session a couple of weeks ago where I substituted my usual critique group session with Phoenix writers for spending what actually became several hours of work on the book. In fact, I was so enthused that I began to worry that I'd fall back into my usual pattern of getting bogged down with the day job and other stuff during the week, and that I'd lose all that momentum. So I tried a different approach and something I've had previous success with in the past. Rather than say I was going to spend X amount of hours on the book during the week or spend an entire evening working on it, I decided to try a more modest target. So I set myself the goal of doing a minimum of 20 minutes every day on the book. And I know that sounds pretty lame, but here's the thing, it really works and on a number of levels. Firstly, even if it's a very short amount of time, the fact that I'm coming into contact with the novel on a daily basis keeps me in touch with the characters and the world that I've created. It means they're never far away from my thoughts and I'm constantly working on the multitude of story issues and plot developments. It just always feels fresh. Secondly, the reality is that even though my stated goal is to only spend a minimum of 20 minutes, almost every time I've sat down for my little session, I've spent at least twice that amount of time and haven't wanted to stop writing. It's like I've played a little trick on myself, and all that constant moaning about not having enough time, but everyone can find 15 or 20 minutes out of the day, so you can't really make that excuse anymore, and suddenly you find you've actually got a lot more time than you thought or dared to admit. So what about you guys? Have you tried the little and often technique rather than trying to carve out this perfect slab of time that very rarely materialises in our busy home and work lives? If you haven't, or even if you have in the past, give it another go along the lines that I've just suggested and you'll be amazed how productive you can be. Maybe you've got other productivity tips and techniques you want to share, or you've got a question or concern you want to raise. Well, I'd love to hear from you, so drop me a line at wayne@waynekellywrites.com, or you can tweet the show at JU Podcast. Right, let's crack on with today's main interview with Sam Carrington. Sam lives in Devon with her husband and 3 children. She worked for the NHS for 15 years, during which time she qualified as a nurse, and following the completion of a psychology degree, she went to work for the prison service as an offending behaviour facilitator. That's a mouthful. Her experiences within this field inspired her writing, so to date Sam has released 2 psychological thrillers, Saving Sophie and Bad Sister, which are available now, with a third book, One Little Lie, on its way later in 2018. Okay, Sam, thanks so much for joining us on the Joined Up Writing Podcast. How are things going so far for you?
Really well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me on.
No problem.
Yeah, it's all been quite fast moving at the moment, and I'm just editing my third book, or finished editing as of today, hopefully.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes, it's obviously going to go to the copy editor yet, but that's major progress, isn't it? Once you can do that whole, it's done from this for this part of the journey. So yeah, and my second book, Bad Sister, was out in October in ebook and December in paperback, and that's been going really well, and I've had some really good feedback on that one. So yeah, everything's really good, and I'm really enjoying my whole writing journey.
Yeah, that I can tell that just from online and stuff. It's obvious that it's been a really exciting time for us. So you mentioned there your most recent book that came out, which was Bad Sister. So why don't you start off just by telling us a little bit about that?
Okay, so Bad Sister is my second psychological thriller, and it introduces a psychologist, Connie Summers, and she's kind of left her prison job. She was lead psychologist at a local prison, and she left under a bit of a cloud. So she basically wrote a report for a prisoner that was it's a good report, and it was a favourable report, which kind of helped to get him released from prison. And he went on to offend again by raping a woman. So, she felt very guilty about that. She had quite a lot of backlash from work. So she left the prison and decided that she wanted to work with victims of crime rather than the criminals. So she set up her own practice, and that's where we kind of meet Connie, just as she set up her own counselling practice. And she has taken on a new client, Steph, who has come from the Protected Persons Scheme, or Protected Persons Service. And she's trying to reintegrate into a new little town called Totnes, which is a village actually quite close to where I live, and I know very well. And she has got quite a lot of issues. So Connie's trying to unpick Stephanie's worries and her fears, but ends up going much deeper into something that then comes up and kind of rears its ugly head kind of thing. And lots of things come out of her time and her sessions with Steph. That
as is usually the case, yeah, things get worse.
Oh, always, yeah. You have to make things worse for characters, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah. Put them in a tree and throw stones at them.
Absolutely, yeah. Knock them out.
So it's, yeah, as I say, and as you say, it's been had a great response from it. It's on my Kindle in my to be read pile. It sounds great. I'm really looking forward to reading it. And you mentioned there's a lot of stuff to do with the prison service, and you talk about your main character and stuff. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background before you became a novelist? Because obviously some of that stuff that you're talking about is quite relevant, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, I think that's really. I had quite a few jobs before I worked at the prison. I've done all sorts of things really, but my main kind of jobs were I was a nurse for sort of 11 years, so that was my main job prior to getting the job at the prison, and I wasn't a psychologist, so this isn't me or anything. Connie isn't. I wasn't, disgraced or anything. But
I just want to put that out there.
This is all about me. I was an offending behaviours programme facilitator, which is a bit of a mouthful, but basically my job entailed working with groups of offenders on certain programmes. Like my key one was called the Thinking Skills Programme, and it's trying to look at their risks and how they might be able to prevent reoffending in the future. So that's the job that I did for about 3 years before writing. So it's a big part of my life. 3 years doesn't sound very much, but in a job like that.
It's intense.
Yeah, it's very intense, very challenging. Could be rewarding as well, but mostly challenging. And so, you gain quite a lot of experience, but also just that knowledge about working with different people. Well, men in this case, it's a male prison, and just it's really interesting to know backgrounds to how offenders got to where they got to, and the decisions they made. That made everything worse for them, and it was really fascinating. But all that experience when I ended up leaving, and all the there's so many emotions that I went through working with them and listening to their stories. I just thought, it's great fodder, isn't it, for writing? So
completely.
That was kind of where I came from, really. Once I thought I wanted to write psychological thrillers, the key thing was kind of thinking about how my own experiences would be able to, I'd be able to portray them in a light with characters that could, explore things differently than I obviously could being there. That doesn't make sense, does it? But obviously I can't.
Yeah. No, it does. It does. I completely understand what you're saying. You talked about the decisions that they made. It's funny because I work in video production is my day job, and for a couple of years, quite a few years ago, a couple of concurrent years, we worked with a couple of youth offending schemes, and so we worked with a lot of young offenders, and I completely relate to what you're saying. I mean, probably even more so to a certain extent, because they're younger than the people that I'm guessing that you were dealing with, and some of these things that they're kind of trying to overcome or that they've experienced are relatively fresh, and it's easy to kind of see, you know, when you first encounter them and some of the behaviour and things, you think, oh my God, you want to give them a wide berth and everything else. But then when you kind of get one of them will be on their own, and you'll just, or one of their youth workers will tell you a little bit about their story and what's happened to them, and you think, oh geez, you know, I completely understand why they might have ended up where they are, and it's this decisions. And writing a novel is and coming up with characters is a similar thing, isn't it? Because obviously it's a series of reactions. You put them in a certain situation and you give them a choice. How are they going to react to this situation you've put them in? And it's this chain reaction, isn't it? And in writing, quite often we want them to go the wrong way.
Yeah. I mean, what I was trying to say is that, you know, I was obviously constrained in when you're working in that, you know, you're doing it for the prisoner, you're working and helping them. When you put this all into writing, you can play around with so much more, and, you know, there's obviously decisions and things in a book that I wouldn't ever be able to have done in a work situation. So, you know, you're playing around with people's lives a little bit, but I've taken like bits and pieces from people I've worked with. I mean, obviously I wouldn't ever use an entire scenario from one offender. It's picking bits and pieces. And like you said about backgrounds, there's one lad that I worked with. I mean, he really wasn't that old, probably very early 20s, and he'd had like 16 foster homes in his very short life. And you know, just all those little things, well, little, that's not very little, but those things that make up who he was, and like you said, the decisions that he made. And one wrong decision has such a massive impact on everybody, on him, on the victim, on the families. It's just such a big ripple effect, and it's quite sad sometimes. You think if only he could have just gone that route instead of that route, or taken that path. And it, you know, it is sometimes quite sad to think, you know, there but for the, what's the saying there? But there but for the grace of God go I. Yes. Because I think in any situation, we don't know how we're going to react given, you know, the awful situation. You just, you know, if you haven't come across it before, you're going to react in a way that you perhaps don't expect yourself to react. You can always, this is why I would do this, but you don't really know. I don't think. And it's about the start that you get in life and where you land. You know, where you're actually where you start off is such a big impact. And a lot of the people that you're talking about do start off in dire situation even before they can walk or talk. They've got it. It's all stacked against them, isn't it? Before they get to the age of 5, probably. Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, you, as you say, you relatively recently, became a professional novelist, or however you want to look at it. Well, that sounds. Sorry. That sounds nice. Yeah, we'll go. But when was it? Obviously, you went through a series of jobs. You spent a lot of time working for the NHS, and then you worked in the prison service. But when was it that you thought, or how long have you been writing? You know, is writing something that you were doing in the background? Were you kind of quite public about it, or were you doing it in secret, like a lot of us do? Yeah, I was doing it in secret for quite a while. I think really I started really. I can't remember exactly when I thought I want to write. I don't know why. I just can't remember. It's always been a part of my life. I've always enjoyed writing, like at school and what have you. But I think it's when I was pregnant with my second child, so about 20. I can't remember how old I was. 24. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I thought. I saw a course. Like Open University type thing, or distance learning. Distance learning, thank you. That's where I was going to go with that. I started doing that. Didn't really get very far for some reason. I can't remember why. Probably because of the baby, and so I'd only really dipped a toe at that point. But I did buy lots and lots of how-to books, and I just would read these books. Never wrote, just read the books. So it then went by, and I went back to nursing, and I don't think I started writing until about 2011. I wrote a short story. I'd bought a magazine, a women's magazine, read their short story, thought, I might have a go at that. So I did. One afternoon, just wrote a story, sent it off, and they said, yeah, we'd like to publish it.
That must have been a great feeling.
It was brilliant. Yeah, really, really good feeling, but a shock as well. And then I got a bit cocky because I thought, I can do this.
Yeah, just as easy.
Yeah, I can just whack out a few more short stories. I can sell those. And then I didn't sell another one for quite a while. So again, it's one of those things that is in the background more. So I ended up, when I got the job at the prison, I'd had that one story published and didn't write again until I left the prison. So it was, a big gap of not doing anything at all. I didn't even think about writing at that point. It was really a huge, 3-year gap of doing nothing apart from writing reports, actually, apart from that. But they, stories involved there.
Yeah, and then what kind of kickstarted? So your first book was, your first published book, should I say, was Saving Sophie, wasn't it?
Yes, that was my first published one. But I had.
I was going to ask you, was it the first book that you wrote,
no.
or?
So when I left the prison, I think it was November 2013. That's when I thought I'm going to do. Well, I started off writing short stories again. So I'd written a few short stories and put them in an anthology, and just did that for a bit. But then I thought I wanted to write a novel. So I think it's probably January 2014 when I settled down and thought, come on, you've got all these experiences at the prison, make use of it. So I started writing a novel which was mostly set at a prison, funnily enough. I did that. It took about 8 months, I think, to write that novel. And I think now, looking back, I'd spilled I just spilled my guts, really. And just so much came out and the novel was filled with far too much detail about prison life. Really, readers probably wouldn't be interested in. So I hadn't really, the story kind of got lost within all my spiel. So, but saying that, I did send it off, started submitting, and I did get 5 full requests from 8.
Right.
So it was, quite hopeful at that point.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then I didn't hear anything for ages. And funnily enough, the agent I now have, Anne Williams from the Kate Horden Literary Agency, she was the very first person to ask my full manuscript. And then it was about 6 months afterwards, she emailed to say that whilst there were very many positive points of the novel, she quite liked my writing, it was unremittingly bleak, she said. So she didn't take it on, but would like to see any further work that I'd done. In the meantime, you see, when you got something on submission, you're told, write something else. Don't sit and wait, carry on writing.
Be ready for that question when they say, what else have you got?
Yeah, which is what happened. And I had started writing Saving Sophie, and I think I'd written about 10,000 words, and I'd put it into the competition, the Crime Writers Association debut dagger, and it got longlisted, which was fantastic. Obviously, I mean, that's such a huge,
brilliant
achievement.
Yeah,
I think.
And so early on, in relatively speaking, in terms of your writing sort of experience, really.
Yeah, it was, and I smile on my face. You couldn't take it off my face at all. Ages, it's brilliant. And so timing was everything, because when I got the email from Anne about, if you got anything else, I'd see it. I went straight back with, actually, I've been longlisted for this award. And she said, well, I'd like to see it. And I thought, well, it's not finished. But yeah.
So when you submitted to that, so for people that don't know, so when you submitted to that, did you have to submit the first 3 chapters, or was it a certain amount?
For the Crime Writers. I can't remember. It wasn't very much at all.
And so you didn't have to sort of provide the full manuscript. It was just send whatever.
At the beginning, it was probably about 10,000 words.
Yeah.
And a synopsis. You had to send a synopsis, so you needed to know obviously where your novel was going to go.
The dreaded synopsis, yeah.
I quite like them, actually.
Oh, do you? Well, you're the first person I've met that does, but that's good.
Because I think that's how I've always. I mean, you write your synopsis, don't you, to send submission, And then obviously I'd written a synopsis for the second book for the competition, so I'd got used to just doing it that way. So that's how I do things now. But
well, that's great. Yeah, it's great if you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's all they wanted, really. I think, if I'm right in. Yeah. Yeah. That was 2015 when it was
long. So obviously your agent's ears pricked up when you said that.
Yes, and then she said, "Oh, come and meet me." So I went up to London, and that was the most nerve-wracking experience ever. Even more so than driving test, I'd say.
Really? What did it involve? It's funny because I have spoken to one other author about this in the past. I think Matt Johnson was a similar thing, and I think his although his description of it was he wasn't nervous at all. For a start, he took it quite lightly, thinking, well, this would just be a formality. And then when he actually sat down, it was like a really hard job interview. And he said it completely took him by surprise. So what for you? So it sounds like it's probably going to be the other way around.
Yes, it was. Yeah, we went on a little boat on the, well, I assume it was on the Thames. You can tell I've got very good geography knowledge. I don't.
You sound like me. It's fine.
I don't get Devon very often. So yeah, we just had tea and cake and had a little chat on this barge, and it was lovely. Yeah, and she was obviously very lovely because I've signed with her. But it was just quite a quick. Yeah, it was really quick after that. But you don't know what to expect, do you, when you first meet an agent? They're the gatekeepers. You've put them on a pedestal for so long, and it's just really odd. They're just human.
And they're just people. And when you met her, what was the kind of thing that she asked you or that she wanted to know about? For people that haven't been through that experience?
I think mainly it was about my background, because that's quite a good, what they'd call a selling point, being that I'd come from a prison background, and that's the area I was writing in. So not that it's expertise as such, but you've got that knowledge that perhaps other people might not. So she was quite interested in that side of things. My writing, that she liked my style of writing from the first book. And when I'd already sent her then my first, 10,000, it might have been 15,000 words by that time of Saving Sophie. And she immediately saw a difference. She said she could see the difference in my writing already from one book to the other, which was obviously a plus point.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes they just want to meet you to make sure you don't have two heads. You're not completely mad, although a lot of writers probably are.
Yeah, we keep it well hidden.
We try. So yeah, just to see perhaps how I came across and whether we gelled a little bit. And I don't know. Some people don't even meet their agents. I don't think they have a phone conversation.
And that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was lovely to actually go up there and meet her before.
And then how long was it? Well, presumably not very long from when you got your agent to Saving Sophie being picked up. So what happened with that?
Well, I ended up finishing, because obviously it was an unfinished novel, which is a bit of an unusual situation to be in, really, when you first get an agent, because normally you've got a finished article that you then edit together and what have you. So I had to actually finish that novel, so it was a bit of pressure, because I thought she might not like it when I finished it. So she's signed now, so tough, but you have to like it. So it was a little while after I met her that by the time I finished the novel, and obviously then gave it to her to look at, and there was quite a lot of tweaking before we got it to a point where she felt it was commercial enough and got the right hook. And that I think where I had to take out a point of view person. I had the point of view of the killer in there, and felt it was a little bit cliche, because there is a lot of that. I mean, I know that it's the way I'd written it probably was cliche rather than having the point of view of the killer. But so anyway, I ended up rewriting a bit and taking that out and putting more of the police side of things in his place. So it's taken a few months to toing and froing to get it right, and I think it was ready for submission in the October of 2015. And at the time, I don't know, my mum had died, so things had been a little bit awkward in terms of timing, of trying to get edits done and things.
Yeah,
but
sure.
finally in that October it went off. And then it's a case of, well, you kind of sit back, don't you, and think, oh, well, it's in the hands of the editors now. So,
yeah.
Again, another nerve-wracking wait. There's a lot of waiting. There's an awful lot of waiting. And I'm not a very patient person, so that's quite hard. I refresh emails probably every 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think it's around Christmas time as well, which is even worse timing, when I actually, Anne said to me that there's been some interest from Avon, who obviously then did take on Saving Sophie and published it. But it wasn't until it was January before I found out that it was definitely. So Christmas was a bit of an emotional time, but for all sorts of reasons.
Of course, yeah.
But I met my then editor, Natasha, who'd been the commissioning editor, in March, and the book was published in ebook in the August of that year. So quite quick, because it's digital first. The process was much quicker. It doesn't take, so you're not waiting for that slot, the paperback slot. It was much.
It's got
easier.
Quicker, hasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, because of that.
So
how did you in the January or whenever it was when you finally got the final confirmation? Do you remember the day or that happened? How did you feel?
Oh, I do. It was an evening when I got the email from Anne to say it's definite. We're getting an offer, and yeah, I screamed a little bit. Luckily, all the kids were here and my husband, so it was really nice to be able to have that, and share that experience and the screams, and then the bottle of champagne, which obviously had to be opened. So that was. And
how have your family found the whole thing? Because presumably, this is all. I mean, this is all relatively recent, isn't it? Even from the very first thing you sent off, your little short story, and you send it off and you sell it or whatever. Relatively speaking, this is all quite recent history. So how have your family found it? Did it come as a surprise that you were a writer, or that you could do this?
I think so, yeah. I think it's still a surprise to them, because I struggle to get words out in an ordinary conversation. So they're like, how are you a writer? How can you possibly...
That's why, though, because we've got the time to plan and put it on paper. I'm exactly the same. I know where you're coming from.
So I think because I'd had a gap between nursing and going to the prison, I'd spent quite a lot of time. They were at primary school aides then, and I'd had quite a lot of time I went to school and did trips and things with them, and then suddenly I got this job at the prison, which was full time. So I went from being here all the time to at work all the time, and so that was a bit of a shock. So then when I stopped again, and now I'm at home, they're kind of expecting me to be the same as I was when I had the gap before, when I was at home. And I took a long time to explain that I'm trying to work now at home.
Yeah.
And that still doesn't compute. It really doesn't. I mean, bless them, they're trying, and they do leave me alone sometimes. Like now, they've left me alone now. But yeah, it can be quite difficult. And my son said to me before I actually got the publishing deal, when you're in the process of writing, he said, but it's not a job, Mum. You're not getting paid. What can you say? I said, I know, but I'm trying to. So it was classed as not a proper job for quite a while.
Right.
Now, obviously, I've got the books, and they're on. They can see them in the shops and things. They're
I was gonna. Yeah. Did you? Do you remember like the first time you saw them in the shops, or that you were with your family and they saw them? What was their reaction?
It was actually we'd gone. It was late night shopping for Christmas when Saving Sophie first went up on the Asda shelves, and it was a little bit early. They'd actually started putting the shelves up, and we'd gone in, and you could see their big trolleys and stacked with the boxes of books, and you could just see the spines of Saving Sophie, and it was like, oh, that's my book. And they were all like, Dad, go up and tell her to put them out now. And I said, I but they did convince me. So we all went up and we said, can we just see those books? And she gave me a funny look, and she said, why? And I said, well, it's my book. And she just kind of, again, gave me an odd look and said, okay. So she ripped the box open and took a photo of the books, and, it was lovely. But then we had to wait another day to go and actually see them on the shelves. Yeah.
Had to go back. Okay, that's the perfect place to take a quick break and grab a review in this week's Book Bloggers Corner. And today, Catherine Sunderland, aka Bibliomaniac, is reviewing The Perfect Girlfriend by Karen Hamilton.
This is the BBC Book Bloggers Corner.
The Perfect Girlfriend by Karen Hamilton. This is a deliciously dark, slow burner of a novel which gradually unveils the length the narrator, Elizabeth Juliet, is prepared to go to in order to win back boyfriend Nate, who broke up with her 6 months ago. She has a plan, she has time, she has considered all eventualities. She will win him back and have the perfect boyfriend, the perfect life, which is all that she, the perfect girlfriend, deserves. This novel is a bold piece of fiction, relying on a protagonist who is unlikable, relentless in her pursuit of her goal, fueled by revenge and bitterness, and yet with a voice that grabs you, holds you, and doesn't set you down again until you have survived the journey to the last page. Juliet, who's also known as Elizabeth and Lily, but I'm just going to call her Juliet to keep it simple, is a captivating character whose observations, comments, unfailing self-belief and sharp one-liners make her a narrator that the reader develops a strong relationship with despite her screwed-up motives and terrible behaviours. We've all met unreliable narrators, but an unreliable and unlikable narrator is something else. Not only does the reader love to hate her, it's also very difficult for an author to create such a character with conviction, but Karen Hamilton does. In fact, she achieves it so successfully it's hard to believe this is a debut. From the opening chapter, I was fascinated by the voice of Juliet, impressed with her front, smiled at her blunt honesty, and yet seriously unnerved by her internal thoughts and her understanding of what sort of behaviour is acceptable or normal. I like that the novel has quite a slow and steady pace to mirror Juliet's calculated decisions and precise movements. For a while I was waiting for this to change, for the big twist or for a shocking reveal, but soon I realised it wasn't coming. What Hamilton has planned was so much more than this. Juliet cannot be distracted from her focus, and neither can the reader. Juliet, flight attendant extraordinaire, is in this for the long haul, and so is the reader, and it is worth it. The Perfect Girlfriend is worth every flight, stopover, late night and hour you spend reading this book, and as for the jet lag once the journey is over, I'm still suffering. Although this is a slow burner, there is plenty of action and drama and tension. The novel is taut with moments of suspense and anxiety. All in all, this was a very engaging and compelling read. I was hooked from the first moment the story took flight, and despite a nauseating travel sickness that hung over every page as the true direction of the passengers was revealed, it was an exhilarating ride. Despite the fear, danger and moments of horror, I wouldn't hesitate to jump on the next flight as long as Hamilton is in the pilot's seat. So grab this book, fasten your seatbelt and prepare to take off. You don't need to know your destination of route, just trust Hamilton and trust me. This is a book you're going to want to read and a ride that will take you days to recover from.
Book Bloggers Corner.
There you go, that was a review of The Perfect Girlfriend by Karen Hamilton by Catherine over at bibliomaniacuk.blogspot.co.uk, and I'll put a link to all of that in the show notes. Let's get back to my chat with Sam Carrington, where I asked Sam about her usual writing day. So you mentioned there about obviously the change in lifestyle and you working from home now and, you know, you're juggling it with having your family around and all that kind of stuff. So give me a bit of a sense of what, if there is such a thing, what does your normal writing day look like?
Right. My normal writing day looks a lot like Twitter in the mornings and Facebook. I do try really hard to avoid all those, but I can't. I'm too nosy. I need to know what's going on. So I'll probably have a coffee and you know, catch up on all that to start with. And I'm still toing and froing quite a lot. I'm taxiing. I'm still a taxi mum. I take the boys to work. And so really by the time I get home and settle, and the dogs, if they let me, I'll sit because I'm currently at the dining room table, which
So am I, actually.
Yeah, I've gone around the house really trying to find my space, but it's not happening. So I'm at the dining room table at the moment, So I'll have my coffee, and then after I've done the Twitter and stuff, I'll open up my manuscript and try and get cracking. And I generally have, well, I'd say a word count in my head that I want to get to in that day. I rarely get to it, to be honest. So probably.
What might that look like?
I always want to get 1,000 words done. And I know that really doesn't sound very many at all, does it?
Well, no, I think
I don't. Of work, I can only do 1,000 words, but sometimes I will do more. It depends on where you are in the book, I think.
I think it depends where you are in the book and what's going on and how much thought time's going into it and all that kind of thing. So do you mentioned a synopsis and that you kind of used it almost as a plan, going forward. Do you still write like that now? Do you plan very much, or do you just dive in and crack on?
I plan, yeah. I've only got a brief, because now I'm on book 4 in terms of writing, so I haven't got quite such a detailed synopsis yet. I've just got a brief, like a bit of a blurb, which I will develop into a better synopsis and keep adding bits in really and trying to flesh it out so that it becomes more of a plan. But I do like my index cards and my corkboard. Now, I'm not a Scrivener person. I have tried that because there's a corkboard. I like the real thing. So I like to stick pins in it, and I like to get photos of people.
I know what you mean. There is a tactile thing. I mean, I do love Scrivener, but that aspect of it, the corkboard, is not the same as physical index cards. I've tried it, and I love Scrivener for lots of other reasons, and I am a complete convert when it comes to Scrivener. But yeah, I'm with you on the index cards thing. When it came to editing my novel, I got index cards, and I didn't actually have a corkboard. I just had to use the table and just lay them out and then keep moving them around. But there is something about even just the tactile thing and actually the physical act of writing stuff on them. I don't know, it just seems to go in a bit more. It's a bit like revising at school, I guess.
And that is the way I used to revise. So I think it must just be the way my brain likes to work. So yeah, I definitely like my good old corkboard. I know a lot of authors that use Scrivener and get on and love it, but I have tried tried it once or twice, but it just isn't the way it works for me. So I do like my corkboards.
And so what do you use? Just use Word to actually type the thing?
Yeah, just Word. I've got lots of notebooks as well, so I use a bit of both. I like to scribble as I think of things. My brain seems to work well when I'm in the shower, which is really unfortunate.
Yeah, I find that. I think that a lot of people, I think it's like you just finally zone out. There's no other distractions. Yeah. Obviously, you can't have your phone or anything in there. So finally, you
Brilliant
actually...
plot twist. Oh, damn. Yeah. I'll before I get out.
yeah, exactly. And then you break your neck getting out the shower. Yeah, I mean, do you find... So when you go through that and you're writing out your plan... I mean, I do that sometimes. What I tend to find is I'm a little bit too impatient, and I always end up starting to write the novel regardless before I get to the end of the plan, which is bad because I always pay for it later on, as I am now with a really, really messy first draft that goes all over the place, that needs to be pruned and trimmed and things moved around and everything. So do you tend to do all that messy work in that planning stage, like would probably make more sense?
Mostly, I would say I do. Yeah, I think like I said, I'll scribble notes and scrap that and what have you before I start writing. Although I do generally write the prologue quite early on, because that might have been what sparked the idea in the first place. So that tends to happen. I've written a prologue first every time, and then started doing the proper planning. So I'll leave that prologue and go on to the planning, and then go back to it probably a couple of weeks later, just so that I've begun to get the characters and things to go with the plot, or vice versa. It depends. Sometimes I wonder if I start with character or if I start with plot, and I can't really. I think sometimes I started with plot and then thought of the character, but with Bad Sister I had the character first. So I obviously just change it up. I don't know. It's just a different process for each book.
Yeah, there doesn't have to be a formula. I guess it's whatever sparks your imagination at the time.
because with Saving Sophie, it was a real incident that sparked it. So I'd already had that as my starting point. So yeah, where was I going now? I've forgotten the question, Wayne. Now
I asked it you a long time ago, so don't worry. It's
see what I mean?
No, we were talking. No, you answered it. To be fair, we were talking about where if you make a lot of those mistakes in the planning stage rather than during the writing stage, like I do.
I tend to have quite a neat first draft because I'll have been editing as I go. I'm one of those writers that do that. I'm sorry to say. Everyone says get it all down, vomit it out, but no, I have to mess around.
To be honest, I think the longer you write, the longer you write, the more you realise that there aren't any rules. I mean, if it works for you, then that's great. If it doesn't, then it doesn't. I don't think it's like some people say write every single day. Some other people say write when you feel like it. Other people say write this amount of words a day. Other people say plan it to within an inch of its life. Other people say no, I can't do it. And I think the point is it's whatever works for you, really.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's why it's quite difficult when people ask for tips. What are your writing tips? I've got loads, but they might not ever work for you. It's really hard. I think the biggest tip is find what works.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah.
And
good luck. Yeah.
So it is quite.
I mean, I think probably the one that comes up that it's said in lots of different ways, but it comes up on here a lot. Really, a lot of people say is right. It's probably the biggest tip is actually do it. Is actually sit down and talk it, because lots of people. Yeah, like you say, and you mentioned in your writing journey, you spent a lot of time reading books about it, which is fine. But I think we all do that sometimes, and I think it's almost like doing the stretches. It's like warming up before you go for the big run or whatever it is. I think it's getting in the right mindset, and I think that helps. And I do it with podcasts and stuff as well. Like if I've not done any writing for a few days or whatever, I'll listen to another writing podcast or something like that, and I'll listen to some other authors talking about what they've been doing, and that's normally enough to kind of inspire me and get me thinking, yeah, you should be doing it, get back in the chair and get some more work done or whatever. So but I think you can't edit it, you can't edit a blank page is what we always say. So you've got to write it. And as regards, sorry,
I was going to say, you learn as you write anyway, don't you? So you develop as you're going and you learn bits and pieces. So you do have to just write.
Completely. So you mentioned there so you've obviously got quite a clean first draft. How do you get on with the editing process? Do you enjoy it? What about? Okay, have a think about it.
Get that in there. I hate it. I don't know. I think I find it difficult because like I said, I've edited as I've gone along. I then find it really hard to look at that and go, well, things need to be changed. Well, why?
Yeah.
I don't get it. No, I do.
Yeah.
But I do find that part quite hard. Once it's down, I'm just not good at then trying.
Especially if you've polished it and you've kind of edited it, because it probably feels like you're going to break something that works.
Yeah. Although I clearly know that it needs editing, and I've got a new editor now for the book 3 that I've just handed in. Although new to me, not new editor.
Yeah, sure,
and
yeah.
Bless her. I mean, she's only just met me. Well, she hasn't met me even properly. We've spoken on the phone, and she's now got me going, I don't know what to do with this. And there's just this one thread in this book that has driven me nuts. I cannot quite get it right, and so it's been edited, and I want to kill myself.
I know exactly the feeling. Yeah,
tearing my hair out with this. So
it's horrible.
She's been so good and really helpful and given some really good suggestions, and it's like we've broken it now, and it's fine, it's good, and it's like such a relief to get it right, but this is the first time I think I've found such a big issue with one tiny it's not even a big thread, there's that it could really be taken out, which is half the problem, because in a sense it could have come out, the thread, but I don't know, there's a few different links to it, and basically we and ahed what to do best for the best. So it's in,
and you've left it.
It's in there.
Yeah, I've got a similar. I've got a similar thing at the moment with a particular part of the book that I'm editing, and I've actually written 3 different versions of a certain chunk of the book, and I keep thinking, no, that's not right. So I take it out. I've got a folder in Scrivener with just trash, just stuff that I just take. I never actually throw it away, but
no, never
it sits in.
Away.
No, nothing's wasted. So I'll put it in there, and then I'll set off on this new course. Now I've got it now. I know, yeah, I've nailed it, and I'll write that. And then my eyes will flick back over to the trash folder, and I'll look at the thing that I've thrown away. And I think, I don't know though. I think that might be better than the thing that I've just written. So then I write another one, and and I'll sometimes sit here at the kitchen table, and my wife will come in, and I'll just have my head in my hands, and she'll say, "What's the matter?" It's like, this is really, really hard, and I don't think people necessarily get the fact of literally not like a woe is me, but the actual thought power sometimes that has to go into these things, or at least it feels like that, because you take it so seriously.
It can take you a day to organise. So one page of editing might take me a day to sort out, because I just can't get the right word or can't fix what the problem is. And sometimes you have to walk away and come back to it and hope that you can start look at it with fresh eyes, because that is a problem sometimes when you've looked at a manuscript for so long. You just can't see the problems with it anymore.
No, you're right. You become blind to it, and I think that's kind of where I am at the moment. I've just got to get my book into just a little bit more shape, so that I can actually give it to some other people, some beta readers or whatever, for them to look at. It's not even in a fit enough shape to be able to do that at the moment, because they're just, hang on, there's great big holes in the plot. I can't understand, how does that link to this? So I've just got to sort that out before I can send it anywhere. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel at the moment. So I understand what you're saying there.
Well, I hope you get yours sorted.
So do I, for my sanity.
It's great if you've got somebody else to look at it, and
absolutely,
helpful, isn't it? And
it is. It's a different perspective.
People give you the read-throughs and can help with that. I've got some lovely friends who read through mine and can put bits and pieces and that I might not have seen. Yeah.
No, and it's often, with hindsight, it's always, well, not always, but often very, very obvious. They'll say it to you, and you go,
"Why didn't I think of that?"
Why didn't I realise that's what's wrong with it? That's obvious. How can I understand that? Because that's not there, or whatever it is. So it's as you say, we're just often a bit too close to it. So So you mentioned there you're already writing. Can you say what the next book is yet, or are you under embargo with that yet? You can't mention it.
I can mention it, I think, because I noticed it's on Avon's website. So
you're okay then.
Because they've just launched their website, and they mentioned my title, so I will gladly tell you what it is. Third book is called One Little Lie, and it's another psychological thriller. Slightly different to the other two. I've still got the same character. I've still got Connie Summers as a character, but I've got two other women characters, and I'm doing a first-person narrative with them. So that's a little bit different for me.
Oh, right, yeah.
In third person, close third person. So that was a different technique for me. So it's out in ebook on the 23rd of July. So it's not actually that long until.
Oh yeah, that's soon. That'll soon come round. Yeah.
And then again, because it's digital first, so paperback will be September.
Brilliant. So it's all happening fast. And you mentioned that. So that's kind of, you're in the end game with that. And are you already thinking about the next book, or do you think?
I'm thinking about book 4. Well, I've started writing or planning mostly. I've written a little bit of book 4, and that one is going to be a standalone. I think. Possibly. No. I mean, it is definitely a standalone. I have got some of the characters probably still popping up, possibly from the other books, but not linked as such.
It's kind of a standalone story, yeah.
Whereas Bad Sister and One Little Lie are definitely more linked. Connie Summers is a key person in that one, but yeah. So another psychological thriller, but a bit more domestic noir, I think, for book 4.
Brilliant. So you're obviously you obviously got a good work ethic, and you, despite all your distractions and your concerns about social media and everything else, you're obviously still doing the work and you're still getting it out there.
Well, yes, I do have to do this book 4 by the 1st of July, which I'm slightly concerned about, being that I've only written about 1,200 words. But I do know people do write far quicker. I know, like Marnie Riches, for example, she wants 2 a year, and I'm just like, I'm in awe of these people, and
me too.
I'm already panicking, thinking, oh God, I've only got until the 1st of July.
Deadlines are great though, aren't they? It's like Douglas Adams says, I love deadlines and the sound they make as they whoosh past.
Although, to be fair, I will give myself a pat on the back because I've never missed a deadline yet. So
there you go.
Yeah, I'm gonna, hopefully not miss this one.
Focus is the mind. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. I'm sure we'll get to see it later in the year and it'll all be fine. So where can people find you and your work online?
Well, I'm mainly on Twitter, I think. What am I on Twitter? At Sam_Carrington and the number 1. I have got a blog which really needs updating. I do go on it quite a bit, but I really need a proper website. But I have got a blog, and it's at samcarrington.blogspot.co.uk. And I am on Facebook as and Sam Carrington author.
Brilliant. Well, I'll put all that in the show links, show notes as well, so people will be able to find that. And it's been really nice talking to you, so thanks for coming on Joined Up Writing.
It's been lovely. Thank you so much.
There you go, the lovely Sam Carrington, and you should definitely go and check out Saving Sophie and Bad Sister as soon as you can, and I'll put all of those links in the show notes over at joinedupwriting.co.uk. But what did you think to the show? If you like it, let me know. If you don't, also let me know, and you can do that in the comments on the website, on our Facebook page, or on Twitter at JU Podcast. And if you do enjoy the show, I'd be eternally grateful if you could take 30 seconds to leave me a quick rating and review on iTunes, as that's how more people can find the show, and it'll also mean I can continue to attract great guests and provide more content. That wraps things up for another week, but don't forget you can find the entire back catalogue of interviews on the website, and that next week we'll have Sam's bonus epilogue where we talked about the popularity of the psychological thriller genre in general. So thanks for listening. I'm Wayne Kelly, happy writing and reading, and I'll see you next time.
Joined up, right?